I'm going to go over some common problems in Terra Nova, and this isn't going to be in any particular order. It's just kind of whatever I noticed first and wrote down here on my sheet. But the first common problem that I notice is with fourth finger or lack of fourth finger, okay? We don't really want to play these open D. We want to use a lot of fourth finger here and to stay on the G string as much as possible. Now, if we cross to the D string here, like in measure 5, it's fine to play open D here, but when available, like at measure 7, we want to go back to that fourth finger D. Now, some students that have bad hand shape, that have too much tension in the left hand, they may not want to use fourth finger. They might be really uncomfortable. Some students can't get enough pressure down with their fourth finger, so they play out of tune. And those are all not great. So definitely check out Season 1, Episode 2, where I talk about left-hand tone, so they can learn how to get a good left-hand shape and get that relaxation in the left hand and really be able to push down that string and get the tension and the pressure off of that squeeze with the thumb and the inside of the index finger. We really can't have that and have good relaxed fourth finger. The other thing that you might want to do is make sure that you're practicing finger patterns going up to the fourth finger, at least in violins and violas. Your cellos and basses can play open strings. It's not an issue here in Terra Nova, but have them practice it in their warm-ups, and then they're more likely to do it in their concert music. When students do play on the D string, a lot of times they cross back to the G string again. For instance, in measure 6, and anytime that happens, like 14, we have the E on the D string and then the C's on the G string. And that's often a problem, especially in younger players. String crossing can be an issue, not just with the bow, but for the left hand. Students need to remember to take that elbow in and rotate the shoulder inward onto the G string. And if they're having trouble with that fourth finger D on the G string, you might want to check their elbows too. That could be a problem. If their elbows out of position and their fingers coming in flat, that could be a big problem. So elbows in, rotate the shoulder on the G string, rotate the shoulder back for the E, okay, E on the D string, and then C on the G string, E, C. Make sure we get some rotation for that in the shoulder and the elbows coming in towards the belly button. When we're crossing strings, we want to make sure that we're keeping a good left-hand shape. Fingers are round. We shouldn't see fingers collapsing. We want to make sure that we're pushing the strings down hard enough. If there's ever any doubt about that, and if these C's just aren't sounding resonant and they're not sounding in tune, okay, have your students pluck that C and see if that C is ringing. If it's just like a thud. If they're pushing down hard enough, they should be able to have some ringing sound, and you can go right down the row and say, okay, who's got the ringing sound? Let's go. And middle school kids love that, and you can turn it into a game show. Who wants to play ring or thud? Ring or thud? Who's first? And just go right down the row. Yes, ring. Oh, thud. Try again. Yes, ring. They win. It's okay to be cheesy sometimes. We also need to make sure that, particularly with students that are violinists that are playing on fractional size instruments, that they're not playing too heavy on the C strings when they cross strings. A lot of times these fractional size instruments will just reduce the tension of the G string to because of the it's a shorter instrument, and so you'll just string it a little looser, and if you push too hard, it bends the pitch flat, and that's no good. So have them grip the string, but not so much weight. We do have piano dynamics as well, so not so loud. All right, the next issue that I hear sometimes is right here at measure 32. Cellos and basses are pizzicato through this section, and then arco at 32. And sometimes they're just not ready to play. And this is an important part because it's the fanfare counterpart to the first violins. So the first violins already had this, but now we have a development taking place in the low strings, which makes it interesting, and we got to get that part to come out. They're not going to be able to take that part out very well and have that part heard if they're playing if they're not ready to play. And so we got to do something to prepare that. We've got this pizzicato note here on beat 4, and then arco, same note. So what could we do? We could play maybe a left-hand pizzicato if we're having trouble. Maybe we could have students leave that last pizzicato out. We can't have them all leave it out. That's not going to work because, these are dotted half notes. We got to have something on beat 4. But if you're watching your students and there's always a couple of students that are just not quite getting there fast enough, you could say, hey, that's okay. Try left-hand pizzicato. Okay, that's not working. Okay, try, just leave that note out and just be ready to go, because this part here in 32 is way more important than the pedal G here on beat 4. When low strings have melodic material here and here, a lot of times I'll see students playing over the fingerboard, and it doesn't create the tone that we want. It doesn't create the waveform that we want. So they have trouble being heard and they don't sound great. So have your students play in bowing lane 2 at 35. At 32, it's piano. You might only want to have them play in bowing lane 3, but definitely not over the fingerboard. None of this should be over the fingerboard or soltasto. It should all be in logical bowing lanes, bowing lane 3, bowing lane 2, never above bowing lane 5. B flats. B flats can be a problem for the basses. I went over this a little bit earlier, but there's a lot of places like here in measure 40 where basses have a B flat, and they need to approach it with fourth finger C instead of second finger C, because that's too big of a gap. So open D and then fourth finger C. Okay, over here at 48, half position. Okay, low 1, fourth finger, open, low 1. If your basses can't figure out half position, it's going to be a long piece because they play a lot of B flats on the A string. And you got to get that consistent. The only way to do that is reliably, with middle school students at least, is to learn half position. So definitely maybe have a bass sectional or two and take them out and show them what to do. Here at 51, it's marked B flat for sure in first violins. I hear this missed all the time. It's very common. Make sure it's a half step from A to B flat. You can have everybody play at the same time in these 3 measures. Make sure it's all in tune, and then separate them back out into their cascaded entrances. But you got to get the first violins to play low enough on that B flat. A lot of times they're not playing in tune. Okay. In measure 41, we have the syncopated part. I talked about some stylistic errors that we can have here, but when we start playing beat 3 too short, sometimes we'll end up with rushing errors too. It's important that we count this very carefully when we have our double up bows and stuff, and we make sure that our students are not rushing. Sometimes they'll take off and rush, and they'll rush all the way back into the segno at measure 3, and then they'll just take off for the rest of it. And 19, by the time we get to 19, we're like at quarter note equals 140, and it's just out of control. So make sure that we're being very careful at 41 with rhythm. Making sure that we're playing a true piano dynamic will probably help with that too. If they're playing too loud, they're probably going to play too fast. Again, balance point here. Make sure your students are playing at the balance point, not the frog. Sometimes when I hear Terra Nova, the A section sounds great. A section's great. B section sounds under-rehearsed. And then we have the del segno back to 3. A section sounds great. Again, coda sounds great. Okay. B, it's A, B, A, right? So the B section needs to be rehearsed more than the A section because there's less exposure to it naturally. So a lot of rehearsals, you might just want to start at 28. Make sure that you get through it. Make sure you go back and rehearse it. Make sure that 28 to the DS is just as polished as the A section. From a rehearsal programming point of view, you're going to want to spend more time in the B section than the A section. And a lot of times we get into the habit of just starting to measure 1. Okay, let's see what happens. And we start, okay, we fix this, and we get going, and okay. Maybe we make it to the B section, maybe we don't. Okay. And then once we get to the del segno, it's fine because we've already rehearsed all that stuff. And then, coda, hopefully the code is not sloppy. It does have a lot of material from the beginning, but we do have some variants here in first violins. But yeah, sometimes the ending's a letdown here, so we might want to rehearse the last 4 measures quite a bit more. But yeah, under-rehearsed B section is something that I hear quite a bit. I would say that that's a common problem. So spend the time on the B section. The A section, you know, it's repeated, so you should spend about half the time on the A section that you do on the B section. So I'll touch on this again. Is like another common problem is that the ending is just very boring. You know, we kind of put everything into 54 and then just kind of lose steam until the end. And I just don't enjoy that interpretation of it. It's not indicated to do that. It's forte to the end. And, you know, we've had phrasing for the rest of this piece. I think we continue phrase here. So at 54, hold back a little bit. And then as we slow down, get louder, okay, maybe heavier bows. You know, we're on the D string here for cello's basses. They might be able to play a little louder. Okay, the C's here on the A string and G strings respectively. Okay, maybe not so much, but the violins and violas are now in a higher tessiture, so they can play heavier, and you know, and then we can end with this big power chord ending and really make a statement at the end instead of just say, we're done. You know, like it's just not a cool ending. We gotta save a little bit and then put weight down all the way to the end, make an exciting ending. You know, Terra Nova, you know, with that, my interpretation of it is that rock style, you know, almost metal a little bit. And that's why I do things like have my students play off the string and, you know, make it exciting. And we want to keep that excitement all the way to the end. We don't want to just fizzle out. So that's my take on Terra Nova. If you have some problems that you can't seem to fix in your rehearsal, no problem. Leave a comment in the comment section below, and we'll try to figure out how to solve that for you. And if you're familiar with Terra Nova, you've played this before, and you had just a part that just was not going well, and you figured out a tip or a trick in order to make that happen in rehearsal, maybe you figured out a cool little exercise, you know, definitely drop a comment in the comment section, and we'd love to learn from you as well. We'll see you in the next video, guys. This has been fun.